Hello, guys. How are you? So, first off, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I want to get that out of the way. I know it's been a couple of weeks, and I was just thinking, you know, there's a lot of things that I know about eschatology. That's the study of the end times. And I've shared most of that through my videos already. And so I've noticed personally that the spacing between my videos is getting a little bit further in between, a little bit further in between. And I just want you to know that I'm still thinking about everything that's going on in the world. At this point, I'm more in the mode of watching and waiting for the dominoes to fall and seeing the geopolitical events and how they tie into the events that are explained in the Bible. And so that's what I wanted this video to be about, was not necessarily a prophetic prediction about things that are going to happen in the future, specifically in 2024. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a pastor. I do consider myself to be a watchman, and the primary duty in that sense is that I alert people of the calamities that are coming. And with the understanding that when the calamities are coming, that means the rapture is coming as well. A lot of times, if I talk about the rapture coming, that's in the same vein as the calamities are right behind it. And I don't want to lose that sense of warning the lost of the calamities, the sword that is coming towards the world, and only focus on the rapture, the great escape. Some people think that those of us who believe in a pre-tribulation rapture are only thinking about getting out of this world, and that's not that's not really fair to say, because if we are doing our job as watchmen, then we are making people aware of the bad things that are going to be coming, and they are going to be coming. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. So things that we can expect or look for over the next year or two or so are things that I feel like I should be telling people about. And I look at the world through the lens of what is prophetic and what is leading to prophetic events, because the prophetic events are very easy to point out, like Damascus being a city no more, being a heap of ruins in Isaiah 17. That's really straightforward. If you just say, Damascus is no more, that's the fulfillment of Isaiah 17. That's really easy. But on the other hand, if you say wars and rumors of wars and pestilences and earthquakes in strange and diverse places, that's really vague. And so there should be somewhere in between where you can say these specific events that are wars and rumors of wars, yes, but they're also the dominoes that are leading to these other events that are specific wars that are itemized in the Bible. If you just take the whole blanket statement of in Matthew 24, when Jesus says that these will be the signs, then that leads to the people that will be scoffers in the last days. They'll be saying, like, even since our fathers fell asleep, things have just continued the way they always have. And there's always been war. There's always been rumors of war. There's always been famines and pestilences and earthquakes. It's the convergence of different events that are also pointing towards the fulfillment of specific prophetic events that we should be watching for. So with that in mind, the things that we should be watching for and possibly even expecting in the next year are as follows. Number one, I'm going to start with the economic aspects, and I'm going to speak to the United States economy, because even though the world is in turmoil right now, politically and economically, the United States is still a powerhouse when it comes to that stuff. So what have been seeing and am anticipating in the future is the eventual collapse of the economy, but the precursor to that will be things looking good, things seeming to be good. Very similar to 2006 through 2008, before the Great Recession, before the collapse of the housing market, Bear Stearns, all of that stuff that happened 16 years ago or so is almost on repeat right now. And we know that that had a ripple effect throughout the entire world's economy. And I think that that would be repeated in the future. So the Federal Reserve controlling the interest rates, the things that they've done over the last couple of years, is very similar to what they did in 2006, 2003 to 2006, basically. And when the last time they raised their rates was in, I believe, July of 2023. And if we go back to 2006, the last time they raised the rates was in June of 2006. And then that began a period of holding where they didn't change the interest rates up or down. And that lasted about a year and 3 months. I believe it was September of 2007 when they reactively began to lower the interest rates very aggressively. But by that time, it was already too late. The chain of events had already been set in motion. And even though they greatly reduced the interest rates as they were going into that recession as a way to try to pull the emergency brake on all of the bad things that they finally saw happening, by that time, the house of cards was already falling down. And I see a very similar trend occurring now. And so going into next year, I don't think that they're going to change the interest rates at their first two meetings. And I believe that's January 31st and March 20th of 2024. They should leave the interest rates the same. They'll have some sort of rhetoric about how the things they've done have gotten the inflation under control, even though inflation is still above their goal benchmark of 2%. They're still going to play the waiting game at that point. I also believe that the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, will hit an all-time high somewhere between now and the middle of March, a little before that meeting, possibly 40,000 for the Dow. And again, that's substantially higher than the all-time high. Right now, it's in the high 37,000 range. And that will be that sort of like ceiling that the profit takers will see as their opportunity. I don't want to get too minutia focused on how that all works and what things will trigger those events. But if you see the stock market get to about 40,000 by the middle of March, then you'll know that the basis that I'm making this expectation, this thing to look for, is sound. Moving forward from there, you'll begin to see the stock market and the housing market begin to quickly fall. If the Fed, when the Federal Reserve decides to lower the rates after that, it will probably be in their July meeting, and that will tie into the fact that it's an election cycle. We also have the United States is producing more oil and natural gas than they ever have in their entire history. They are producing more than any country has in the history. And that's part of the reason that you've seen the gas prices fall down a little bit recently. But you are also seeing them start to take back up. And that's tied to some of the unrest that's happening around the western part of Yemen, which is up against the Red Sea. You have the Suez Canal. That's where a lot of the oil and also just general shipping goes through the Red Sea, because it's a much shorter trip to go from Asia to Europe going that way rather than going all the way around the bottom of Africa. But with the Houthis, who are in that region, being aggressive towards shipping containers and whatnot, a lot of companies are deciding to take that longer trip. But there's a lag time when the events happen that cause them to change their process and the actual impact that that has on the cost of goods and the cost of fuel. And these attacks had been happening over the last few weeks, and I believe that right now we're starting to see the actual impact on the fuel costs. That being said, I think that the United States will continue to produce as much as they possibly can because it's an election cycle and voters have very short memories. 9 months, a year, most people think about the last year when they go to the polls. And so if the people who are in charge right now can make things feel a little bit better by whatever means necessary, then the voters will remember that, even though it's not as good as it was several years prior. And I think if you ask yourself honestly, are things in my lifetime, I'm 41, almost 42 years old, I can't think of a time where things have been really trending upward for an extended period of time. And I mean that from a sense of the world as a whole, not just this little sector or that little sector, but the morality of the world, the overall security of the world. Those things seem to be deteriorating over time if we look at a long period. And the last 5 years is a very easy period of time to say that things have gotten worse. But if you are honest and you look back over a longer period of time, it would be hard to find an extended number of years where things actually were getting better from all of those pictures. Morality, the family, not just the economy, because there's political things that can be done that make the economy better, but that doesn't address the root cause of a lot of the world's problems. And many of those come from drifting away from the precepts or the principles laid out by God. And while that seems like a really basic solution, it is the only solution. And if you have an entire society drifting away from that, even though there might be pockets of people who are saying, this is what we need to do, we need to return to God. It's just like the prophets in the Old Testament saying, this is what God says, and this is what we should do, and this is what's going to happen if we don't. And while God is long-suffering, he's not forever patient when it comes to withholding his wrath. And as we're approaching the actual tribulation period, that has already been written out. That is going to happen. This is just a leading up to it. So, about the election, I don't think that it matters who wins the presidential election in 2024. You will have half of the country up in arms, metaphorically, maybe even literally, as a result of that. If Biden is still the nominee, if his health maintains, if they don't replace him, and he wins, you'll have people on the right saying, there's some sort of election fraud going on, or this person should not be president because of XYZ. If he isn't and someone else replaces him, the same thing. Whoever the Republican nominee ends up being, we're going to assume that that's going to be Donald Trump unless something catastrophic happens. If he wins, we already know generally how people react to that. I don't think the election is going to be a good event for the United States. But prior to that, you have, much more importantly, the things that are going on in the Middle East. Already we're seeing Hezbollah become much more of a factor with Israel, and that's the region that's in Lebanon and Syria, which is north of Israel, before you get to Turkey, right? So you have Israel, tiny little nation, and then directly to the north is Lebanon, and a little bit east of there is Syria, and north of both of them is Turkey, and east is Iraq. You've got Jordan, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got Yemen, you've got Egypt. But the next group to really be focused on is going to be Hezbollah. And Netanyahu has already said, Once we're finished with Hamas, we're going to shift our focus onto Hezbollah, and that just so happens to be in the region where Damascus is. And so if it escalates and continues down the path that it's going, you're going to see more involvement with the Houthis in Yemen. You're going to see more involvement with the Hezbollah members in Lebanon and Syria. You're probably going to see more involvement from the Islamic Jihad group east of Israel. And that's the nations that are laid out in Isaiah 14 to 24. I went over that in my other video that I made in the middle of October, explaining how Psalm 83, Isaiah, and Ezekiel 38, those are all progressive events. The Ezekiel 38 situation is not something to expect in 2024. You will probably have a lot of other people saying this is going to lead to that, but I personally don't think that happens until much later. Israel needs to deal with these proxy terror groups as a whole and then have peace before God puts the hooks in the jaws of Gog to pull him down for the Ezekiel 38 situation. I went over that in that video. If you want to check that one out, it's my most viewed video on the channel. I think it was just a matter of at the right time, it had the right words in the title, and that's why a lot of people saw it. But this year coming up, you probably will see Israel complete their mission, so to speak, with Hamas and shift their focus to Hezbollah. You'll have, most likely, the United States will still be at least present and semi-supportive, probably still talking out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to trying to please the world, but also maintain stability in the region because it's an election year, because the impacts of instability will affect the election. And so they have to play, the people in power have to play things very, very carefully in order to make it look like they are supporting Israel, but not really supporting Israel, and also minimizing the impact of the conflicts on the economy here at home. And that's going to be, so you'll probably see Israel focusing on Hezbollah and possibly the United States focusing on the Red Sea, the Houthis in that area. What else? Let's see. I don't really feel the need to talk about China and Taiwan. I think that's something that can happen at any point. I don't personally believe that there's any sort of prophetic event there, other than, as China is more of an anti-America situation and you have them battling each other economically, cybersecurity wise, those two countries will become less and less prominent because of the fact that I don't think they're going to be major players in the end times prophetic situations. Going back to that, you'll have more and more economic instability here at home, here in the United States. That's too vague to really lay out exactly. I do think that March is the time to watch for the peak and then a sharp drop afterwards. And then you'll start to see a lot of very aggressive reactions from the Federal Reserve as well as the government. And they're going to throw certain things by the wayside because they're going to look at voting blocks. And while they have certain things that they say when everything is okay, they're going to focus on the things that cause the most pain and try to alleviate those rather than, for example, like if we're producing more oil than ever and more than any country in the world right now, that really isn't good for the image of caring about climate change, right? But they know that more people are concerned about the price of goods, the price of fuel, the cost of living in general, and that is a better boon for their voting base as we enter into that election cycle. So you'll see them start to really, really, really focus on those things that matter to the most people without really caring about the things that they say they're focused on. Because in the end, all they care about is keeping power. All they care about is gaining more control. You'll probably have more people talking about universal basic income or UBI. You may also have more people talking about the benefits of digital currency, not like Bitcoin, but like a central digital currency. And you might also have people talking about the need for more of a social credit situation like they have in China right now, but you'll have more of that, just the seeds being planted for that. I think that's more of a 2025 thing, to be honest. But there will be a lot of talk about the UBI, Universal Basic Income. There will be a little bit of talk about central bank digital currencies. And then after the election, for the last couple of months of the year, once whoever is in power, personally, I think it's going to be another Democrat win, even though I don't think that that will be the voice of the people being heard. But for by whatever means necessary, I think the Democrats will win the presidential election. And I think after that, you will start to see more and more of the concept of the social credit score as a result of the unrest after the election. You'll also probably see more talk about the digital currencies after that, the universal basic income after that. So really the key points to watch is going to be March for the peak of the economy, throughout the entire year for Israel advancing towards Hezbollah, and then also July-ish for the Fed to start reducing rates, and then after the election for the rhetoric to change towards more of a control state situation. So those are the big points there. Things to watch for during this year, and obviously you can expect the unexpected. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. That's all I got for you guys now. Again, Happy New Year. I'm starting. I want to thank Sean, my friend Sean, for pushing me to do this channel, and also pushing me to start a very small men's group that we're going to be doing once a month in the next year and beyond. I would ask you guys to pray for me because I've never done anything like that before. I want the Holy Spirit to lead those get-togethers. I also would ask that you pray that I have the wisdom to know when to speak and when to listen. Like James 1:19 says, we should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And I want to focus on being quick to listen and slow to speak. These guys are men that I've met through my work. Most of them are players at the casino, and I'm bold enough to talk to them about this stuff. But Sean has definitely helped me out with that, just being confident in my understanding of things. And they've expressed an interest in learning more about some of the things that I know about. So I would like to help them to become disciples and not just students. So if you could pray for me in that regard, and I'll do my best to be on here at least every couple of weeks. Again, at this point, I'm really just watching and waiting. If things happen that I feel the need to comment on, I'll get on here. And if I am studying something and I see something really interesting, I'll definitely get on for that. And I am still making notes and preparing shorter videos for the word study that I told you guys about a couple of videos ago. So all of that's going on. I wish that I was able, that's not the right word. I wish I was willing to devote my entirety to a full-time ministry. there's a little bit of trepidation there. I do have a family. I have a full-time job. Um, Being honest with you, my family is not entirely on the same page as I am with a lot of this stuff. So again, pray for my family in that regard, because while I talk with them about these things to some degree, I it's different when you're having a conversation than when you're just making a video, and when you love someone enough to understand that they don't necessarily see things the same way you do. And that can be a struggle sometimes. I know some of you probably have similar struggles, and yeah, I think it's important to be able to surround ourselves with some people who can support us and that can affirm what we feel. So I just want to let you guys know that there are people out there. That's another thing. See, that's what happens when I don't use notes. Another thing that we should expect this year is a further division and concentration of people on not just a political point of view, but much more importantly, on a spiritual point of view. That you're going to have a lot more people who show their true colors when it comes to their spiritual entrenched beliefs. You're going to have people who will become those latter day scoffers who are just wanting to live and let live. And you're going to have more people who may not even know about a lot of the things that are going on, but they feel it in their spirit. They feel that the time is drawing short, and they're going to want to know more about what is happening and what these things mean. And so my challenge for you for this year is to look for opportunities to be bold and just go for it. And just, if somebody asks you about what you think about what's happening with XYZ, I guarantee you that person is an opportunity to share not only what the Bible says about the events that are happening, but also the gospel. If they aren't saved, if you find out that they are just, maybe they're a conservative, but they're not a Christian. Maybe they're liberal and they're not a Christian, but they are still worried about the things that are happening in the world. And you can tell them about the peace that surpasses all understanding, and you can explain to them why you have that peace and how you feel that the world is heading in a specific direction and what the Bible says about all of that stuff. And that's why you have that peace. That's why I have that peace. Like, I have friends, lots of friends, and a lot of them have concerns on one hand about things that are happening, or they've chosen to just say, I can't do anything about it. I'm going to do my best over here. And la 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 la. They don't want to think about, much less know about the things that are happening, the things that are predicted to happen. And so some people who are concerned but also curious, those are the people that you should be able to talk to about what's going on. But don't bang your head against the wall trying to tell everybody that, after you have that initial conversation, if they are la la la, fingers in the ears, like dust your shoes off and move on. Because there are people who are wanting to know, and they're concerned and curious, and that's what you should be looking for. So that's my challenge for you. All the other things I said to watch for is validation, but the most important thing to watch for is an opportunity to explain to someone else who is concerned and curious about what's going on in the world, and ultimately, hopefully, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:22, you can be all things to all people, so that by all means you might save some. He knew, and we know, that you can't save them all. But if you are putting yourself out there, you can save some. And that's what we're called to do. Until then, I'll see you guys soon. My first meeting with the guys group is on the 11th of January, so probably sometime after that. I'm going to work on my notes for that. But I do love you, and I am thinking about you. And until next time, Maranatha.